This week in IT, multifactor authentication lets Cisco users down and the Russians in. Microsoft Teams Connect arrives in preview to make cross-enterprise collaboration easier. Azure gets a slight lead in the enterprise cloud space, and Windows Server is getting a new feature to protect against brute force SMB dictionary attacks, and there's much more. So there are several security related stories that I want to cover this week, but I'm going to start with one that's related to an alleged state-backed attack by the Russians that happened back in May. Now, it's alleged that Russian state hackers were able to compromise an account by taking advantage of a default configuration setting in Cisco Duo multifactor authentication. Now, the alert that was issued by the CISA and the FBI says that this is basically a misconfiguration. But really what this is a default configuration in Cisco's security product. In short, the attackers were able to gain access to the network and then use cloud-based email services. The attackers also used the print nightmare vulnerability in the Windows print spooler that was, of course, largely unpatched across many systems at that time last year. So according to the security announcements, the victim account had been unenrolled from Duo due to a long period of inactivity, but it was disabled in Active Directory. As Duo's default configuration settings allow for the re-enrollment of a new device for dormant accounts, the actors were able to enroll a new device for this account, complete the authentication requirements, and obtain access to the victim network. So in other words, the default configuration in Cisco Duo is probably something that you need to change. So if you're using Active Directory and Cisco's multi-factor authentication, then you really need to look into that default configuration to make sure that dormant accounts aren't able to just re-enroll and then get access to your network. Now, in other news connected to Russia, the German Cybersecurity Office has issued a statement saying that they advise against using Kaspersky antivirus. Now, of course, it's been suspected for many years that companies that are connected to the Russian state may be potentially providing a backdoor into your device if you install that antivirus software on your machine. And there have been other cases of this with Russian antivirus software. Kaspersky has always claimed that they don't have any connection to the Russian state. Now, to be honest, that's a little bit hard to believe, and whether you trust Kaspersky and other Russian antivirus vendors is up to you. But for their part, Kaspersky has made a statement saying that, of course, this announcement is basically politically motivated, and of course that their products are perfectly safe to use. And quickly going back to last week's news, QNAP has warned its users that have its NAS devices that they could be affected by the Linux dirty pipe vulnerability. Now, this can allow attackers to get complete access to a device. Now, while the kernel versions that these QNAP devices have been updated by the people who actually maintain the Linux kernel itself, QNAP hasn't provided updates for its devices yet. So if you have QNAP devices, especially if they're directly connected to the internet, make sure you get them patched as soon as QNAP release updates. So in some other interesting news this week, in a report by IT management company Flexera, Azure is slightly ahead in the enterprise cloud space over AWS and, of course, Google Cloud. Now, this is just a very slight lead at this stage. I think it's just 3 or 4%. But this is really important because the thing is that Microsoft is able to offer enterprises something that can really span the private data center and the cloud. So if you have that kind of hybrid configuration that many enterprises want. Now, most enterprises want to keep some of their stuff in their private data centers because they don't want that in the public cloud. But there's lots of data that they want to have in the public cloud as well. But making those two things work together is something that Microsoft specializes in because, of course, for many years they specialized in on-premises servers. Now, this is something that Google Cloud and AWS aren't able to directly offer in the same way that Microsoft is. So going forwards, it'll be interesting over the next few years to see whether Microsoft is able to get an even bigger lead over AWS, especially in this particular space. Now, according to this report, AWS is still miles ahead in the small business space because small businesses are much more likely to put everything into the cloud. But nevertheless, of course, the enterprise space is where Microsoft has always excelled, and this is the market that they're going for with Azure and its hybrid cloud capabilities. There were also a whole load of announcements this week from Microsoft about hybrid work and making hybrid work work. Now, of course, as more people start to go back to the office and we have this new reality of some people being in the office, some people working from home, we need to adapt the technology and the way that we use it to make that situation more convenient for everybody. And Microsoft has made a series of announcements this week about that. Now, I think the most important two here are Teams Connect and the PowerPoint Recording Studio and Cameo. Now, basically, Teams Connect is going to solve a whole load of problems for people that work across enterprises. So if you have, for instance, a small team of people working in another enterprise that you need to collaborate with on a regular basis, that can be a real pain to share information that you have in Teams. Now, what Teams Connect does, and it's going into public preview shortly, is it allows you to connect channels from one of the teams in your enterprise tenant to a channel in the tenant of another team, and to do all that seamlessly, and literally within just a couple of minutes you can be working with people in another company and you're able to securely share data with those people. Now, before this has been very difficult. You need to basically keep switching tenants and doing all of this really complicated stuff to get access to what you need if you're working on a project with people from another company. And this is aimed to make that whole process much, much smoother. So it'll be really interesting to see how it works in practice. The other thing that's interesting here is the PowerPoint Recording Studio and Cameo. Now, what this lets you do is to basically add live video to a recorded PowerPoint presentation. And I believe there's also some integration with the presentation feature in Teams as well. Now, of course, over the course of the pandemic and while everybody was sitting at home, video has become much more important. So now we're all used to having meetings with the camera switched on. We're all used to attending webinars where we can actually see the speaker now rather than just a slide deck. And of course, things like YouTube have just grown and grown even bigger over the last 2 years. And I think what Microsoft are attempting to do here is address that reality that people want video. People want to be able to see the person speaking because it helps you to keep the listener engaged, and that's what this feature is aimed at. Now, there are other new things that they announced this week. So there's a new RSVP feature in Outlook that will basically allow you to say when you get a meeting invite whether you're going to attend in person or remotely. So of course that helps to understand, is it worth even going to the office if only one person is going to be there? So you have an understanding of who's going to be physically present in the office. There's a new feature called Front Row in Teams Rooms, where the video gallery appears at the bottom of the screen so the people who are sitting in the room can see the remote colleagues face to face. And again, this is all about helping to keep that interaction and attention during a meeting. And the Surface Hub 2 camera was announced. This is the first camera powered with artificial intelligence from Microsoft with automatic framing, ultra-wide field of view, and image optimization, again designed to give the people attending the meeting a first-class view of what's happening. And again, of course, all this helps to increase engagement. And in some Windows Server news, a new insider build was released this week that has a new security feature, and it's called the SMB NTLM Authentication Rate Limiter. And basically what this is designed to do is to slow down the ability of a hacker to perform brute force dictionary attacks against SMB file shares. So in an upcoming build of Windows 11 and Windows Server, there's now going to be a default 2-second delay between each failed NTLM based authentication attempt against an SMB file share. So just to give an example of how this is going to change things, so for instance, if an attacker was previously able to send 300 brute force attacks in a 5-second period, this same attack would now take that attacker 25 hours. So basically what's happening here is Microsoft is increasing the cost of performing that kind of attack. This new feature will be configurable for administrators and you can disable it if you like. And probably the most important news this week is that the Petri IT knowledge base relaunched with a new site design. So this has been completely designed from scratch. There's also a lot of work gone on in the background to upgrade all the infrastructure that the site works on so that it's all much faster, the search is much more effective, and you can see the design is much more modern, much more usable, and it's designed to make the experience much better for our readers. So we're really excited about the new design here. We hope that you come and have a look at it and let us know what you think. So while I'm on the subject of Petri, on the 24th of March, we have the first Get It conference for the year. Now this conference is free. All you need to do is come over to the conference page on petri.com and you can register there. And we have 5 great sessions on Microsoft 365 and how you can make the most of it in your organization for collaboration and productivity. And we have a lot of great speakers, including the legendary Paul Farott, who will be joining me as co-host. We have a lot of our regular Petri contributors, plus some other experts that are going to contribute to this virtual one-day conference. And Paul and I are kicking off at 9:20 Eastern Time. And then we've got a session on understanding internal and external sharing in Microsoft 365. And then we go on to how to control Power Platform and other software as a service application deployments. There's a session on how to set up and work with Microsoft Lists for work management and tracking. There's also a round table with a whole load of familiar faces that you might know, and we're going to be talking about how to choose the right collaboration solution in Microsoft 365, whether that's Teams, Yammer or SharePoint. There's a session on how to set up Power Automate flows to automate workflows between different apps for effective collaboration. And we'll be finishing off with a session on how to run a successful meeting, live event or webinar in Microsoft Teams. So please head over to the conference page, sign up. There's also a free ebook coming with that for people who register, which contains a lot of the technical information that's going to be shared in all of these sessions. So I look forward to seeing you next Thursday. If you want to see more videos like this, then please subscribe, and if you like this, hit the like button because it helps to get this video seen by more people on YouTube. But that's it from me this week, and I'll see you next time.